Trump, but first I have to talk to you about a great idea for holiday gifts. Don't gift another gadget that your friends and family will only use once and then lose before the new year. Give them a gift that they will actually everyone to love. They always would do com/Candice or with done something different, or with code Candice at checkout. Give a gift they'll remember. Give good adventures. Hindsight is 2020. Anything that looking back you think, you know what, I got that one wrong, or I wish I had this knowledge I could have done something different. It's easy, obviously, it's hard.
By the way, always in any business, no matter what you did, no matter what your success, you always would do certain things a little bit differently or differently. The biggest thing, look, we had tremendous success. The water was the strongest it's ever been. The economy was the best in history, and I did it twice. I had to do it after. I had to rebuild it after our friends from China either sent us or came in from China, and they should pay reparations, by the way. They should pay. Even they can't afford to pay the world because there's probably $60 trillion the damage they've caused. But they should pay reparations. They should not be allowed to get away with this. And people don't talk about that anymore either. But I would say the big thing would be certain people I would have used differently. I would have put different people in certain positions. If I had a choice, I don't have to go specifically, but I could give you names at a later date. But there'd be people, I had great people too, rebuilding the military, all the things I did. We have great generals, but not the television generals. There were certain people that I would not have put in, I would have put somebody else in. But at the time, I had spent 17 days of my life in Washington, D.C., but now I know it better than anybody, and I know the good. I know we have some great people, and I would say probably more than anything else, I would have made put certain people into positions that I didn't give them. I took somebody, put them in a position, and I didn't like the job they did.
I think definitely, and perhaps some snakes around you as well.
We had some snakes, yeah. And look, you always do. No matter what business, whether it's politics or anything else, you always do. I had some very loyal people, I had some very disloyal people, very bad people. And I think this is true with companies. If you're running a big company, sometimes you make a decision to put somebody there, and it always happens. It's rare that you go through, a long period of time and everybody's just perfect. But I know people that would have done great jobs in certain positions, and I didn't like the jobs that certain people did. And usually I fired them. And every time when you fire somebody, it's a big deal. But usually I fired them. Overall, we had great people.
Be a bit offended. The last thing I want to say. The last thing I want to say.
Absolutely, positively will not say that, and I will not allow that. I will not allow that to rise. I grew up in an oppressive and racist system.
Welcome back. I'm very excited about this panel today. It's going to be an awesome panel because today I have joining me back former police officer and author of Beaten Black and Blue, my dear friend Brandon Tatum. And credit where it is due. I always say there's some people that I disagree with. None of them ever want to come on to my set or meet me. But this person has now been here twice. I've met him twice. He is the chairman and co-founder of the Greater New York Chapter for Black Lives Matter. Welcome, Hawk Newsom. Okay, Hawk, I'm going to start. You've been going viral, and I want to get into that. I messaged you, I texted you, and I was like, this is awesome, and it's something that we agree on and we're passionate about. But I just want to talk about, I've been covering on the show, just New York in general, because I was born in New York. I was raised in Stamford, Connecticut. My mother graduated from Rye High. So I'm a New Yorker, and looking at what's going on in New York today just seems crazy to me, all across the spectrum. So this video popped up on Twitter, and I want to get to and talk about first and get your guys' opinion. A Subway. A woman just starts freaking out about just the ads that are on Subway. So let's actually watch her.
Mama, for kids, are you looking at this? Is that okay?
No, it's not. It's not.
This is talking in
know, obviously I've been covering extensively how hyper-sexualized the culture has become. This is just not the same America that I grew up in, and obviously as someone who grew up, used public transportation, buses, subways, you see this stuff as an ad, like people, their tongues touching and saying pansexual for an ad for OK Cupid. How do you guys feel about it?
Well, I think that, I want people to understand that this is not an accident. It's not like somebody accidentally drew it up. People spend billions of dollars in marketing. So it's a strategic marketing strategy, and it is effectively hurting our youth. Grown-up adults who are participating in this, they may understand how to deal with the images that they see, but young kids are not able to process this properly. However, I do believe that it's targeted to get young people's minds, conditioned, so when they do get older, they're more susceptible to buying into what this advertisement is showing.
Right, what do you think, Paul?
I just can't really understand why people can't let others live and let live. In my Bible, it says that God should judge people, and we should not. I believe it says something like, judge not, lest ye be judged. Unless God came down and ordained people with the power to judge all gay people, then we should still be staying true to
That wasn't
that
gay. I don't care if it's two straight people and their tongues are interlocking on the subway. I would have a problem with it. So let's not make this a gay thing. It's not about being gay. It's like, I'm talking about sexualization, right? So two tongues touching. Let's pretend they're female and they're both straight. I saw a problem with it. You're saying you think it's fine.
Well, it's people kissing. As you know, the more we progress as a society, the restraints get looser, right? The further we move away from God, the more it opens up the world to do whatever it pleases, right? So I can't necessarily say that this is wrong. I can't say this is wrong. People kiss on TV every day. People kiss everywhere all the time. But now it's wrong? Why do you have a problem?
Because I think it's disgusting for children to see two tongues of adults touching in a subway, and I am raising a child, and I would never want to walk somewhere. And again, don't care if you're black, white, straight, trans, pansexual, you don't have these terms even mean anymore. I don't want to see it, okay? And that's not kissing. Two tongues, that is not kissing, right? That is something else that's happening there, right? It's disgusting. It's meant to be provocative, and it's unnecessary that an advertiser sat down and thought that this was the only way to convey a message when you're talking about OK Cupid, which is supposed to be a dating app. Like, why does it even need to be sexual at all? This is not what the ads looked like when we were growing up.
I think it's hypocritical because you got the whole world on Tinder, you got the whole world hooking up with people, but now it's not. Now you don't want to see it in your face, but we've been seeing it in movies, we've been seeing it on television. Now all of a sudden people have a problem with it. Okay, if we're going to say this is problematic, then we need to take a step back and look throughout the decades and say, okay, this is the process. This is how we arrived at this point. We can't just act like this is something new to us.
I agree. I do. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking issue with the way society is going down the drain.
Let me interject real quick. Let's go back to the Bible, about judging. The Bible is very clear. You should know them by their fruit. Yeah. So the things that are in the Bible doesn't say that you shouldn't judge people. You can't condemn a person, but you can make an evaluation about what you think is appropriate according to what God's word is. And so when you go, I think we're on the same page with saying that these things are not appropriate. It's fair to say that as a Christian man, as a believer, these are not appropriate. Neither are the movies that they're presenting kissing in that are eligible for young people. I'm not talking about rated R movies. I'm not talking about PG-13 movies. I'm talking about ones that are involving children that are rated for younger audiences. When you have kissing and sexuality, I think it's inappropriate. So just because they put it out there, just because it's mainstream, doesn't mean that it's not inappropriate.
Are we back at a place where we are arguing again sex ed in school?
Yeah, I think sex ed.
Are we back at that point?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, if you want to go back to that, if we didn't introduce it, then AIDS would have claimed more lives than it did. If we didn't take a step back, prove it.
I'm happy
Prove
to.
it.
I'm happy to.
Prove it.
So
Because
right now.
if you let me talk, sis, you like to spin people. I'm unspinnable. I'm 300 pounds. You ain't gonna spin this one. All right. If you look back, we had to educate people as to what sex was, so that we could stop the spread of those sexually transmitted.
That's incorrect.
How so?
Factually incorrect. So I'm going to educate you. I don't need to spin you, but I am going to educate
Please
you.
do.
Okay, so there's a book by Owens unpacks very carefully how sex education actually, what it's led to is more kids having sex than other. It was predicated on a lie. The entire sex education push was predicated on this belief that high school students were doing it anyways. They were already having sex, and that was wrong. Actually, before they started the sex ed initiative in the 1970s, the average kid that was graduating high school was graduating with their virginity. After they started the sex ed initiative within 1 decade, that radically transformed, and now the majority of kids are doing it. Actually, sex education was teaching them about what sex was, and that conversation should have been reserved for their parents in the birds and the bees discussion. So sex ed has perverted children, not the other way around.
I think I just want to respond, and I just want to keep this clapping because we go back decades ago. People were having children in their teens. People were being married in their teens. So now you're telling me, it's all false. No, we can look up that one site, but I'm talking about other individuals and other people who have proved that we needed sex ed in our schools to wake our children up to the fact that there are diseases that can kill them. Now we can argue a lot of things, but the truth is the truth. The truth is, no, you told me what you read in a book about a person who you admire or you choose to adopt. It's someone who you choose to adopt their philosophies. The problem with this country, the problem with this country is we take the words of people on TV. We take the words of politicians. Instead of doing research for ourselves, we live in a society where people perpetuate lies and it continues to create this divide in our country instead of looking at the truth. What is our aversion to the truth? The truth offends people now. People don't want to hear the truth. Why? Because there's so many people out here spinning the truth.
Well, I just told you the truth, so I just want to tell you
that. You told me your truth.
No, I didn't tell you the truth. Thomas Sowell is not a politician. He's actually a researcher, getting back to research.
So Thomas Sowell is Jesus, and the rest of these people are simple followers who know nothing about
No, not kids became more sexualized. More kids.
I worked on this as a kid. I was a peer sex educator as a kid. I worked on this.
Let's get to this. Let's get to something that we agree with. Let's throw that in there because that is a good way to move on. Yeah. Well, let's get something we agree with. So you had a video that went viral, and I have been kind of beating the drum about these vaccine mandates and how unconstitutional they are, but also just so reminiscent of atrocities that have happened in the past. And you had a video that went viral, so let's watch that clip of New York.
They say it's a choice. Okay, it's a choice. You shouldn't exclude people from everyday activities if they choose not to engage in something. The government story on the vaccines have changed every 1 to 2 months since Donald Trump. The vaccines have had effects. People come out and say, oh, well, that never happens. But they do happen. People die. Joe Biden said folks wouldn't be hospitalized. People are being hospitalized and dying. Yet again, I'm not telling you not to get it. I'm just saying you should have a choice.
That is well said. I'll ask you a personal question. Are you vaccinated?
Oh, no.
Okay, I'm not.
I'm sorry.
Me neither.
Yeah.
So, just explain to us kind of inside track of what's going on in New York City right now, and what is the response that you're getting to this, which to me should be common sense. People should have a choice as to whether or not they want to inject chemicals into their body, but under this administration, it's apparently not.
I mean, now that I have your audience's ear, right? Oh, I didn't just wake up one day and become right on one topic, right? As a leader in this movement, as a man who has a business degree and a law degree, someone who has fought for our people, who has served our people, someone who's followed Christ, right? This movement for the liberation of black people, we're right on a lot of topics. And what I ask conservatives and people who don't usually listen to us to do is actually open your mind and listen to the things we're saying. Get past what's in front of you and just try to understand where we're coming from. So now we're here at these vaccines. You are fully aware of the fact that black people have been experimented on in medicine since slavery. This is nothing that we can argue.
I covered it on the show.
Yeah.
We argue about the truth.
It's the truth. Say it again.
The speaking experiment, 100% the truth.
Come on, what else?
Yeah.
What else?
That's
about it.
Yeah.
Give it to them. What else?
Well, under slavery, technically slaves were property. So beyond slavery is what I think is almost the most interesting element, because we're talking about an experiment that ended in the 1970s. It's very recent. The same CDC, they never were disbanded. The same, human health services, they never were disbanded. In fact, they've been promoted and they have more money and power than ever. And we've never been in America where they said that you're going to be forced to either not be able to move in society or inject yourself with something that's been approved for, now it's just patently approved. But it's problematic.
Me personally, because of all the reasons you mentioned and I mentioned, I'm not taking a shot. Someone asked me what's my burden of proof to make me take it. I don't know. I'll know it when I get there. But this vaccine and this passport has shifted the narrative in a lot of ways. Because right now, they've made these vaccine passports freedom papers, right? To where police, to where business owners, to where people who do not like black people can use these vaccine passports as a way to harass and oppress black people. So you look at Carmine's, and y'all love this, right? Carmine's, in my opinion, was the biggest fake news story of 2021. Why? You had these three women who were seen on TV pummeling this little Asian woman, right? And what the story that Carmine's ran with, and New York City politicians ran with, was they were asked for this vaccine, and they were reacting violently. But what they didn't explain was that this woman taunted them from the time they arrived. I could lead you through a long sequence of events, but there was this condescending tone in her voice. There was racism. There was a racial slur mentioned to these people. Okay?
I can't even dispute any of that, and I have not followed that story closely enough. But I do want to know that obviously because of this story situation happened in Carmine, Black Lives Matter is now, actively saying they want to end vaccine mandates. What has been the response? And it's interesting because in New York, all the politicians were very pro-Black Lives Matter during the election cycle.
Okay.
We haven't seen any of these, that same amount of support since Biden got into office. I have said to you that I think Black Lives Matter is very much used to elect politicians, and then once the politicians are in office, nobody cares anymore.
Here's the thing, Candice. We talked about this years ago, and what did I do? I agree with you. You want to know when Black Lives Matter will have another rise again? It'll be the next presidential election. It'll be the next election cycle. So with that being said, I just want to walk you through how we got to this place, and I'll make it quick. These three women were walking back into the restaurant. They were going in. They were escorted by a manager, and this woman stepped into the hallway and said something. There's no audio, but all four women turned and looked like, what did she say? And they went outside and they handled her, right? Now, a lot of people might say, hey, Hawk, this audience is like, Hawk, what are you talking about? They handled her, they put hands on her. But I was talking about a bunch of honky-tonk bars, right? And I know those people over there get drunk and brawl a lot, okay? Like, people fight over disrespect. So if you come and say something to me that has been a racial trigger to my people for hundreds of years, and I put my hands on you, there is no one who can judge you for being violent in that situation. What they did was, this woman antagonized them, but the politically savvy thing to say was, it was the vaccine.
Okay.
That's how they covered up racism.
I just want to jump in here. I agree with you that people shouldn't blindly take the vaccine. If that's what you want to do your research.
Yeah.
It should be a choice. People shouldn't be made to do that. However, I disagree with this being racial. I don't believe that it's racial. Just because there's disparities doesn't mean that there's discrimination. Thomas Sowell wrote a book about that. Disparities and discrimination.
Y'all love this man.
He's great.
Do you know who Thomas Sowell is?
No, I have to read up one.
You don't know who Thomas Sowell is?
I do not.
Okay, so after you get off the show, go look at Thomas Sowell. They have a documentary. You can look it online. He's the smartest, most brilliant man, black man to ever exist.
Okay.
Smartest guy. He was
Smartest black man.
to ever exist.
Smarter than Malcolm X.
To ever exist.
Smarter than Jesus.
To ever exist.
Smarter than Jesus.
To ever exist.
So that was a smart black man.
Yeah, if Jesus was a man, so
Yeah,
that counts
okay.
like that. I mean, so
He was black though, right?
So yeah, but what I'm saying is that you can say he had darker skin. I mean, we can go down that argument. But anyway,
But let's stay focused.
we'll stay focused on this. So I don't think it has much to do with race, but I think it's a correlation here, right? You see that these vaccines disproportionately affect black people.
Yeah.
The same way with certain other things in our society that disproportionately affect black people, like the welfare state and other things that Democrats do, disproportionately affect black people. And so I see a
Republicans have had their hand in racist policies.
we can talk about you can talk about a hand, but I'm talking about the overall scheme here. You cannot deny that Democrats have been overwhelmingly responsible for the degradation of the black community. Even now, who's pushing the vaccine?
Now, here's the thing. You asked me a question, but you want to keep talking.
Let me just ask you this question, then you do this. Who's pushing the vaccine right now? Which political party?
I can talk.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Y'all starting to like me. I appreciate that. Here's the problem.
I just want to say I have like 4 topics I want to get to.
I know we always run over.
I know,
Last time we went an hour over.
I know.
Okay, so
This
let
should be
me real quick.
Okay.
Real quick. The Democrats and the Republicans have oppressed black people. America's a racist place.
No, it's not.
Yes. Every statistic indicates that it is.
Give me an example.
An example, systemic racism.
Let's talk about policing.
Let's talk about policing. I would love to talk about
Are you saying
policing? But let's talk about education first, because everybody's like, oh, he's Black Lives Matter, he's going to talk about policing. Let's talk about.
You don't agree.
Let's talk
with Black Lives Matter.
Let's talk about. Why are you spinning me? Why are you spinning me? Let me talk. Get the tension out of your chest. Fall back to take a
I think he said more words than everybody, so let's not pretend he's not letting you talk.
No, because I'm just 2 against 1.
I'm not getting up.
Bonnie and Clyde of the Republican Negro Brigade, right? so here we go. Systemic racism, red line, right? Candace always talks about black economics. The reason why black people are so far behind in the wealth gap is because programs were set in place to deny us loans, to deny us home ownership, to deny us access to an education. And this has been a trickle-down effect. This is still proven.
What program denied us access to education?
There was education in and of itself. We were not allowed into school.
Yeah, but you said a program.
This is, I'm sorry, systemic racism.
Yeah,
Systemic racism. So programs like, what was it, the 1934 Housing Rights Act, I believe it was, denied us access to banking, right? We couldn't get mortgages. We couldn't get insurance. So here you had black people who couldn't hand down a house to their children. Black people who couldn't get insurance policies, so when they died, their families couldn't bury them properly. Their families couldn't have wealth. This is a system. This came under Roosevelt, and this is a very real thing. Like I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a purveyor of truth to the American public. Everybody can find that. No, because the thing is,
you want to go back to his redlining, and it's great. I mean, FDR. But I just whenever you have to, let me finish my statement. If you ever have to go all the way back to the 1930s.
Because you got to
go back to the 1930s point. Black people, no, I don't have to be quick. Actually, if you want to teach me how to shoot, talk about shooting cop. If you want to talk to me about making a point, then you need to look at my law school education.
Okay, but
Listen to what I'm saying. Black people are in schools that are failing across the country, and nobody has fixed that. I know you want to say it's Democratic cities, but Republican cities are failing black people in schools.
What about responsibility for the black community?
Thank you. I'm so glad you said that. Responsibility for the black community. You said something about BLM. I have moved in a different direction than the Black Lives Matter movement and created something called Black Opportunities. Because I know that in order for black people to attain independence, for black people to attain independence, they have to build themselves up financially.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, I need to talk to you about where you're buying your meat. As we all know, misinformation is everywhere in our culture, but what most of us aren't aware of is that misinformation has invaded the grocery store. Did you know that meat labels product of the USA is more often from overseas and from the U.S. farms and ranches? That's why Good Ranchers was founded. They sell 100% American meat. They connect you to local American farmers so you know what you're buying and trust what you're eating. With Good Ranchers, you can cut through the noise and misinformation and take back control of what you buy. Don't bring mystery meat into your home. Have the confidence you want in every bite of chicken, seafood, and steak by ordering Good Ranchers today. At half the price of those other online meat companies, you can get steakhouse quality you deserve at a price everybody can afford. Go to goodranchers.com.
Says Life, Liberty, and Levin, and we have two great guests. Katie Pavlich, how are you?
Nice to see you, Mark. Thank you so
Candace
much.
Owens, how are you?
Very good to see you.
Two of the great, young, smart, intellectual conservatives who I wanted to have on the program. Now, Katie Pavlich, in 2010, you earned your Bachelor of Arts degree in Broadcast Journalism from the University of Arizona. After completing your degree, in 2010, you moved to Washington, D.C. You became news editor for townhall.com, contributing editor, Town Hall Magazine, Fox News Channel contributor, and now an alternate co-host for The Five. And you're ubiquitous, as are you, Candace. Candace, you're known for your commentary. You are the director of urban engagement at the conservative advocacy group Turning Point USA. You were pursuing an undergraduate degree in journalism at the University of Rhode Island. You left school. You said, that's enough. You launched socialautopsy.com in 2016, a website where you were exposing bullies and so forth. Now, this is very interesting to me. You really come from different backgrounds. You're both conservatives, is that correct?
Correct.
And you came at it from a completely different direction. This is something I think about all the time, how to appeal to people, how to reach out to people from different communities, people from different backgrounds, because I personally think conservatism is the glue that holds society together. Why are you a conservative?
Well, as Margaret Thatcher used to say, the facts of life are conservative, and I think that's really just part of who I am. I grew up in a conservative household. My parents were small business owners, so it really just was kind of part of who we were. They never sat us down and said, this is what the left believes, this is what the right believes, Republicans, Democrats. It was just more of a conversation piece. And I wrote a letter to Bill Clinton when I was 6 years old about taxes and how it was unfair that he was taking our money and we didn't get to spend his money. And he wrote me back with, a generic argument about paying fair shares and all that kind of thing. So that's when it really started. But, I'm a daughter of the American Revolution. My grandpa fought in World War II. I have lots of family members who were in the military. And it really just was part of growing up for me. I didn't realize until high school that the man wearing a cowboy hat on the poster in our garage was actually Ronald Reagan. So my parents it was how we were. I grew up on 5 acres of land in Flagstaff, Arizona, and we really just lived a conservative lifestyle. Personal responsibility, being self-sufficient, being responsible for our own actions, our own future and pursuits. So that's why I'm a conservative. It really just is part of who I am.
Candace, you didn't grow up that way.
I did not.
You become a fairly recent conservative.
That is true.
How did you reach that point?
Well, I like to say now that the reason I'm conservative is because I used to be a liberal, and I learned a lot. Obviously, growing up in a black household, there's a lot of emphasis placed on black people today. Being liberals, being Democrats, it's pretty much programmed into us via the public school system that is the only option for us because Republicans, of course, are racist and they want to harm the black community. And I had a different experience in life, realizing that everything in my life seemed to be going wrong. I was blaming the world for everything that was going wrong. There was no personal responsibility because in a lot of these liberal movements, you're essentially taught that there's always someone else that you can blame. And you're pointing the finger at everybody else, you're not looking internally to fix things, and you'll find that things will continue to go wrong. So during the 2016 election cycle, I was watching our wonderful president take a run for the White House, and the conversation was very strange. The rhetoric that the media was using was extremely aggressive. They were trying to convince me that he was a racist, that he was a sexist, that he was a misogynist, at one point that he was incestuous, right? They started that horrible story about Ivanka Trump, and at one point that he was a rapist. And I said, this is very strange. I grew up in a household listening to hip-hop music. Trump was glorified in a lot of those music, in a lot of those songs, and all of a sudden they wanted me to believe that he was a racist. So I had to ask myself in that moment, is it plausible that racism is being used as a theme to turn black people into single-issue voters? And the answer to that question is, of course, yes.
What does conservatism mean to you?
Conservatism to me is, limited government, liberty, and sticking to the Constitution, and realizing that government is not the solution to almost anything, and that your community, your family, is a solution to everything. Going back to the beginning of the country, we rejected this communal way style of living. Going back to the Pilgrims coming here, being conservative is really just about making your own decisions, deciding on your own future, and being responsible when you fail, learning from those failures and be able to move on and be successful in your own right, not having to depend on other people to make your success for you. Obviously, you go through life and you have, partnerships and bosses who promote you and give you opportunity, but it's really up to you to take those opportunities and pursue them in a way that makes you successful.
And what does conservatism mean to you?
Well, if you look at the inverse, I think liberalism to me means bondage, and conservatism means freedom. The freedom to choose, the freedom to have responsibility to go after things in life. It's the founding principles of this country, that any person can come to this country with the clothing on their back and make something of themselves. I learned conservatism through my grandfather. I didn't know that was the name. I didn't know these were conservative principles. Starting his life on a sharecropping farm, working tremendously hard, 5 years old, picking cotton and laying tobacco out to dry on a farm, and today he now owns that farm. That was the American dream, and we lost that. We gave that up as government got bigger and the individual got smaller.
And this is all quite important from a philosophical perspective. You just related it to your own family. Is conservatism about individualism?
Absolutely.
Is conservatism about a circle of liberty that surrounds each individual that government must never penetrate? Is this an appealing idea among young people today in college campuses today? I mean, when I was a young guy, a little while ago, and I would go college campus, I have to say, I was fighting. I was in the minority all the time because the professors weren't any different. They were collectivists, they were tenured, some of them were Marxists, and it all sounds so cool. And we had to fight this. And I thought the people who fought it with me were actually the smarter ones. Is that what's going on today, or is it worse in our colleges today?
Well, I know that parents get really nervous about sending their kids to college because they're concerned about the indoctrination, but for me, going to a liberal university and having that combative role with professors both in the political science department and the journalism department really solidified my principles as a conservative and why I am the way I am. And I was challenged every day and had to defend myself and come up with another side of the argument that was valid. And when it comes to other students, I was always leading the charge to try and bring conservative speakers and fighting the administration because they were infringing on our free speech rights by charging us these ridiculous security fees. And so I would say, the campus environment maybe hasn't changed. It is pretty bad. I speak on college campuses a couple times a semester, and there is no room for any kind of thought outside of the Marxism, outside of the socialism. But what I've learned is that the students may buy into that, but when you actually ask them what socialism means, they can't define it. And when you start pointing things out like, each and every one of you are wearing a different pair of shoes, and each and every one of you have a different style backpack, or a different style iPod, or a different phone case, and it seems really simple, but the fact is that they are individuals on every single level of their life, and socialism and communism and Marxism don't allow them to do that. But you can never blame students especially for something they've never been told. And so I feel like it's my obligation to go to these college campuses and to simply present the other side of an argument, of an idea that they're not getting inside of their classrooms. And oftentimes, I always ask people who disagree with me to come. I tell whatever group is hosting me, invite the college Democrats, invite the college socialists, invite people to come and listen, invite your professors who have been saying these horrible things about my speech already, even though they've never met me or know who I am or even know what I'm going to talk about. And they may come in disagreeing with me and they may leave disagreeing with me, but the rewarding thing is when students come up to me afterwards and say, look, I walked in here disagreeing with you, I still disagree with you, but at least I know where you're coming from. And even better is when they come and say, I totally disagreed with you, but now I agree with you and I'm going to go and tell 10 of my friends exactly what I learned here tonight.
You were a journalism major.
I was, yes.
You took journalism courses. That was your major.
Correct.
Was it hard left? Were they indoctrinating people? Is that why journalists in this country are so almost a person? There's few exceptions. Speak, sound, make the same noises on TV and radio.
That's correct. It definitely is indoctrination, and I will say this, it's much worse today than when I was in school. We're talking about just the difference of 5 years. What I have observed on college campuses this year.
And you're on college campuses also?
Yeah, we do college campus tours. It's terrifying. It's actually terrifying. There's this idea that it's virtuous. You can't speak as a conservative on campus without being boycotted, without being protested, without students lining up and playing music loudly so that they can drown out the sound of your voices. Now, we're not speaking about anything controversial at Turning Point USA. We believe in free markets and capitalism, the founding principles of this country, and the students hate that. And they don't hate that, as Katie mentioned, they don't hate that because they formed these ideas. They hate that because they have been indoctrinated to hate that. So I say that college campuses are literal liberal indoctrination camps. And that is why I understood, especially in terms of me wanting to wake up Black America, which is my highest priority, that was an extremely important vertical to hit, is how I ended up as a liberal, is how I ended up thinking that perhaps socialist principles could save the world. The most important battle that we are facing in this country today, and what conservatives did wrong, was handing over the school system to the left, allowing them to take that over. And it is the most important battle that we are fighting today.
And this is a great point. I mean, it essentially is a monopoly, an ideological monopoly. And yet, this is where we're told academic freedom, free speech. At least, again, when I was going to colleges, even though I was a minority, from a philosophical perspective, they would hear you out. We had a few conservative professors. There's less and less of that. So we have this ideological monopoly, let's call it that, on our college campuses, even though there's thousands of them. There's a few exceptions, like Hillsdale College and Grove City and a few others. But they're the exceptions. What do we do about it?
Well, I would say we need more conservative professors, but that is not the easiest feat in the world.
Let me just point, because the faculty, it's incestuous. The deans, the faculty, they pick from their own schools, they pick people who have their own ideology. I mean, I've been looking into this myself. How do we break the back of this monopoly?
Well, I think that we have to first look at the fact that taxpayers are funding these government institutions. So we call them public schools. They're really government institutions, especially when it comes to universities. They're constantly going to their state legislatures and asking for more money for less productive work and less results. The universities on the public level, the government level, are not responsible for anything that they put out. So they don't care if you go for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, as long as you're paying them money. They don't care if you get a degree in sociology. They actually probably prefer that. But there's no results. They're not trying to get people a job. So how do we change that? First, you talk to your state legislatures about how the universities are taking all of your tax money and they're not actually producing any real world results of students who can then go get real jobs instead of being $100,000 in debt over a women's studies degree.
Pull back the funding?
Pull back some of the funding, look at what they're spending their money on. When I was in college, I would go on a radio show every single Thursday and expose what was happening inside the universities, inside my classroom, what my professors were saying inside the classroom, what they were spending money on. I remember they built a fake border wall across campus, and they were preventing students from getting to class. And those are the things that student fees are going towards, that's what parents are paying for, that's what taxpayers are footing the bill for. And so exposing that from the inside out is important because alumni can look at it and say, I'm no longer going to give my money to these universities, I'm going to give them to conservative organizations instead that are actually making a difference on campus. Suing universities is key too because they think that they're not going to be held accountable by anybody. But when they're infringing on the rights of students, organizations like FIRE have sued on behalf of students. ADF has also sued to say, look, you think you can bully students out of their First Amendment rights by bringing conservative speakers here to simply offer a different point of view? We're not going to put up with that anymore. Their constitutional rights apply on campus and off campus.
When we come back, I want to know what you think too, what we should do about this ideological monopoly on our college campuses. I think these are great ideas, great things that are going on. But I think it is the biggest problem we face when it comes to young people in this country. Don't forget, folks, to join us almost every weeknight on Levin TV. Go to crtv.com/.
Your brand new book, Mr. President.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you.
Good morning. What went into it? What was your approach here? Just to bring back those 4 years to life through photographs?
Well, we had a great 4 years, and I've been watching what's happening, and a lot of people were remorseful, and they were like, can we do something? And it's really pictures of a lot of great things with the military, with so many of the things we've done. And I think it's sort of a happy book. We bring in some negativity about what's happening now, but frankly, it's really a happy book, and it's a book largely of beautiful pictures of events that took place and some of the things we've done.
Sure, and we're going to talk more about the book a little later on. By the way, you can pre-order right now at 45books.com. Mr. President, your administration came up yesterday. Our White House correspondent asked Jen Psaki about something that Joe Biden said about you during the campaign and during one of the debates, and she turned it around. Anyway, it's a great question, and listen to the answer as well. Here's yesterday at the White House.
In 2020, when roughly 220,000 Americans had already died of COVID, Joe Biden said about Trump, anyone who is responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. Is that still the standard now that more Americans have died under President Biden than President Trump?
And the former president was suggesting people inject bleach. He apparently, reportedly, didn't even share with people he was going to interact with that he had tested positive for COVID himself. He continued to provide a forum for misinformation. This president has made the vaccine widely available. He's relied on the advice of his health and medical experts, and he is trying to be a part of solving this crisis, getting the pandemic under control. And I think there's a pretty stark difference between their approaches.
So, Mr. President, when Joe Biden said during the debate with you that 220,000 Americans had died on your watch, you should not be President of the United States. Now more people have actually died.
770,000.
During the Joe Biden administration.
Well, he's done a terrible job, just like he did with the H1N1. He's done just an absolutely terrible job in getting it out and getting people to take it. I mean, people just don't want to take it, and the vaccines have been, I have to be very proud of the vaccines. We did it in less than 9 months. People said it was going to take 5 years to 12 years and probably wouldn't work. They work incredibly well. Some people don't want to take them, and that's their freedom, and that's what we have to do. But people don't want to take them because they don't trust Biden. They don't trust the administration. We had none of that. Everybody was fighting to take them, and we were doing great, and we were doing really great on distribution. We also bought billions of dollars worth before we knew it was going to be successful, which saved us 1 year. So many things we did right. And what they're doing is very sad when you look at what's happening. But more people died during this year than last year by a very substantial margin. And sadly, this year is not up.
Well, Mr. President, why wouldn't people trust the vaccines? They were developed during your administration.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, they did a pause on Johnson & Johnson, which really sent shocks through. Over 6 people that didn't die, by the way. But 6 people, and for that, millions and millions of shots given, and they did the pause with Johnson & Johnson. That was very bad, and they just haven't been able to sell it. People are not trusting this administration. And if you remember when during the debate, I think she said and he said, "Oh, if it's Trump, I won't take the vaccine. I won't take the vaccine." And then, as soon as he got elected, he tried to claim that he did it, but he forgot that he got a shot during my administration. He got a shot, but there was just a great distrust of what they were saying and what they were doing, and I think that's the problem, and that's why they're trying to set up mandates and really hurting things with the economy with the mandates, in addition to other things.
Well, Fauci kept changing what we were supposed to be doing. And then when you look at Afghanistan, you talk to military families and they say, we don't trust this administration. We put our kids' lives in the president's hands, and look what he did. He pulled out and left so many Americans behind enemy lines. Many of them are still there. When you look at the border, people don't trust what he's doing down there because you'll hear Dr. Fauci saying, you need to wear your mask, you need to get vaccinated, but yet they're letting so many people flow over the southern border. And Peter Doocy, he had a busy day yesterday. He was also at the press conference with Dr. Fauci, and he pressed him on that issue. Listen to this, Mr. President.